Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Applied Anthroposophy. I'm Tess Parker, and joining me tonight is Julia Polter for our extended Seed Series presentations. We're so glad you're with us. So take a moment and get your candle of it. And I will light my candle. And I also have a little verse to share. Anthroposophy opens its well springs so that the human will, carried by love, may draw from her waters. It brings to life love for humankind and thereby works creatively in impulses for moral action and true social interaction. So I'm so glad to welcome Julia tonight. Oh, did I get your wrong? Did I get your screen? Okay. She is a Christian community priest for over 20 years, working on the East Coast out of Boston. She holds a master's degree in philosophy, literature, and linguistics, and is a trained hospital chaplain and spiritual director working at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. She really blends art, science, and spirituality. And I first met her in Hawthorne Valley, New York, for a Sacred Gateway conference a few years ago, where she gave this beautiful, profound keynote that just really settled everyone into some profound places. So I'm very grateful to welcome Julia tonight, and I'll turn it over to you, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me. I just moved. I just want to add that I just moved to the Pacific Northwest. So I'm now located in Bellingham, which is not far from Seattle and Vancouver, BC. And I'm working as a manager for a spiritual care learning center in a smaller community hospital, St. Joseph's Peace Health Hospital. And what you see here right now, I'm in my office. Next to me is my classroom. I currently don't have students, but I am writing on a kind of a thesis where I'm trying to connect my wisdom as a priest and anthroposophist with the teaching of spiritual care, while recognizing, all the latest research and the experiences of teaching how to take care of people in the hospital and to meet their spiritual needs. And being invited to this series sparked in me again also a reflection in which I'm continuously engaged as a priest of the Christian community. I'm trying to be in the setting now, in the hospital setting, and still be a priest. And I am a priest. And how does that actually work together? How do I apply my anthroposophy with what is happening here on a daily basis? And how can what I do at the altar of the Christian community, how can this radiate out into the larger world, beyond the walls of the church, beyond the city, to everyone in the world in a very practical and applied way? I love this term the Jesuits have given themselves, though I'm not inclined to become a Jesuit at this point. They say they are contemplatives in action. And this is what I'm, in a way, try to do. And I do have thought a lot about how to teach people spiritual care. And if I could say something, I would say it all boils down in a way to love. But it's not this, love as an emotion. It's a much more higher form of love, I would say. And the question I'm living with is, can you actually teach love? Can you teach people how to love? How do you do that? And what kind of situations do I need to put people? What are the questions I have to ask? Which kind of processes do they have to enter? And I think in these programs of spiritual care, clinical pastoral education, we're actually doing this. And I saw that the Applied Anthroposophy series also engages the students in the 6 basic exercises. And while I was thinking about what am I actually doing, how do I apply anthroposophy, and how can I explain this to people and make it actually alive for them, that they feel engaged to apply this to their own lives, I realized I'm actually using the competencies, the skills you acquire in the 6 basic exercises in my teaching. So I expect my students actually to develop skills which run parallel to the skills which you possibly acquire when you do the 6 basic exercises. And I want to explore that with you a little bit. So my focus today is more on the reality of love, how you can learn it, on how to apply it, and how it is connected with the 6 basic exercises. But I have a like a foundational experience which I want to share first before I go into this. And this foundational experience relates to the question of applied anthroposophy. One of the big learnings I had as a student of spiritual care was that I came from a background, from the anthroposophical background, where you work with meditations, with mantras, with sacred texts, and we have a great and high regard for the power of these texts, for the sacredness, and we try often not to change these texts because we know they have a mantric power, and that made me really, really nervous when I realized that many of my patients actually want me to pray for them and to make that up on the spot. I was terrified. I didn't have my vestments. I didn't have my book. How am I going to do this? I really was, I cannot say it differently. I was terrified. How can I really create this vessel for the divine with my own words? And I did also know it doesn't work that I just read something or say something by heart. I needed to move into this sphere where it can become real and where I connect with the person and their unique circumstances. So what I started to do, I really started to observe how certain verses or meditations, or maybe also the act of consecration of man, produce a certain mood in my soul, in my emotional life, and also in my body. And when I then was seeing the patients, I did not recall the content and try to reproduce it, but I anchored myself into my soul experience and into my bodily experience, which I had in this morning, and recalled it as a mood. And out of that mood, I could speak. And this is just something I wanted to invite you to take home or experiment with it also when you When you would like to bring a spiritual content into the world, can you connect with your inner experience and keep it alive and move it from your head into your emotional and physical experience? I just wanted to leave this there as an introduction and invite you for a kind of a brief centering exercise. And I only will take like 3 minutes for this. It's a little bit short, I'm aware. You can turn off your screen if you want to. And this is exactly this thing that you try to tune in into a mood or into an experience and re-experience as vivid as you can in the moment. And the experience or the mood which I like you to experience is a nurturing moment. So that's not easy, actually. So keep it simple. I had a lovely cafeteria worker had observed me that I had put coffee on my latte, brown sugar on my latte the other day. And I just let it sit. I didn't stir it. I just let it sit there like that. So a couple of days later, I came to the cafeteria. She was making the latte. She smiled and took the sugar without even asking me and put it on top. It was just a loving and caring gesture. So I can sit down and imagine this and the feeling I had in the moment. Can I recall this? So this is my invitation now for 3 minutes. It can be something in the past. It could be a pad on your lab. Imagine a nurturing moment in your life, and just move into it for 3 minutes. And I will invite you back into the room just by saying that I invite you to come back. I don't have a bell here. So the question was, when someone nurtured us or when we nurtured someone else? I would like you, when someone nurtured you, what you experienced in your body, when somebody, whatever that person did, nurtured you. When you're ready, please return your presence to the moment here. Thank you. It can be very moving exercise. Some people have hard time doing it. Some people go very far back into the past. Don't know if we want to put any comment in the chat. If not, it's fine. There is time to speak later also. Warming. Somebody writes warming. Softening. Embracing and seen. I'm so grateful, joyous. I felt seen. At peace. Held. A stirring in the heart, a four-part movement. Affirmed. Thank you. Heart opening. Fulfilled, didn't need more. Settled and cozy. The simple act can be profound. Whole, valued. Thank you. So this exercise for me personally had been a lifesaver, among other things, while working on the COVID floors with a lot of misery and suffering and dying. It was like a refuge. I could go there and almost bathe in that, and it stirred up a lot. So maybe a little exercise you can carry with you. It will change also your perception into the day, because you will see these acts more clearly and more vividly. They usually, we don't notice them, but we can start to notice those more and more. Okay, I'm going to speed up here a little bit. So as I was thinking about love in the last couple of years and how it can be taught, I had a conversation with someone, and that person was not an anthroposophist. It's just I would say, spiritual person I like to have conversations with. And as I was going on about what love means for me, I don't have children, I'm not married, so I have to also find ways of loving which might not kind of fit the traditional mold. And the person then asked me, so what would you choose if you could choose to be loved or to be recognized? If you had to choose at this point in your life, maybe for the rest of your life, would you want to be loved or do you want to be recognized? Oh, I see all these, not see loved. Yeah, I was going there too. I said, yeah, I think what I'm yearning for is I want to be loved. I want to love and I want to be loved. And then God is love, and who remains in love remains in God. But then the person said, you know what? He told me about a friend who had posed the same question to him as well. And that friend was a Catholic nun. And the nun, very accomplished person, had said to him, at this point in my life, I want to be recognized. And I thought, wow, a Catholic nun would say that she wants to be recognized. And that stuck with me, and I continued to think about it a lot. And I came to the point that I actually also thought, I want to be recognized. I think if I think back of situations in my life where I really grew and came into my best self and lived up to my highest potential, that were moments of recognition. And recognition in both ways. It could be positive and negative. So you know that feeling when somebody makes you aware of a flaw or something you have, or a tick, you have this angry energy in the first moment. And then if you realize it's the truth, it's actually quite liberating. So I became curious about this recognition. And I spoke with another friend who just died last year, my friend Elizabeth. And I said to her, you know, I think this recognition thing, that's really, I want that. That's a good thing. And she said, Julia, that's totally egotistical. You know, you just want to be admired. I said, no, there is value in it. I need to know what this value is about this recognition thing. And I thought about it, and I'm also, you have a degree in philosophy, so old things came to me. And I remembered a picture I had once written about many years ago. It's from Jacob Böhme. It's a German mystic. And if you could, what do you call it? Spotlight my camera for a moment. Doesn't matter if you don't see it really. Can you see this little? You can also pin it to make it bigger. So what you see on there, if you can see something, is a circle with an inner part and an outer part. And where the inner part and the outer part meet, there's a set of eyes, and they look at each other. So you could say in a way they recognize each other. And the outer part signifies, as Jacob Böhme says, the eternal freedom, God beyond creation. So this is the outer part here. God before he actually created something. And the inner part signifies the creation, the world, nature. And the part in between where the eyes look at each other, where something of recognition happens, that's actually the creative sphere, where creation, evolution is set into motion. And Jacob Böhme calls this the mirror of Sophia, der Spiegel der Weisheit, der Spiegel of Sophia. And you find allusions to that also in the Old Testament, or if you think of God creating an image of the first human being as an image of himself. So this mirroring, this recognition is part of the creative act. And I think when we relate as human beings, in order to be creative and to evolve, we have to have this relational recognition. And that's not only among us human beings, it might also, we need to be seen by the angels, we need to be seen by the divine, and have that kind of relationship, mutually recognition. So somebody wrote here in the comments, to love and be loved, one must be truly recognized. So it is not an either or. It's actually a form of love. And I was so thrilled when in the first session you had, I forgot his name, the first speaker.
Brian Gray.
Yes, Brian. When I put another picture here, when he quoted René Querido on the reflections on the mystery of love, and he showed the different spheres of love. There was a short moment where he showed those, and he said the physical body, the ether body, and the astral body have certain qualities, and then the higher parts of the human being, which are going to be developed, have certain qualities. But the I am, the self, the ego, the quality of love connected with that is actually recognition. So I found that very affirming to see this in my exploration. So when I say, how can love be taught? I could also say, how could one teach another person to recognize others? Okay. So how is this working in my practical approach in the clinical school of love here I have in my hospital? I have, and I will give you several clinical examples while I go through the 6 basic exercises. So the first exercise has to do with focused attention. That's the pencil exercise. I really invite you to watch this little video, which is accessible through the Applied Anthroposophy website about the 6 basic exercises, if you're not familiar with it. So that you can focus on a pencil or on a pen and try to connect every thought just relating to this pencil. The capacity which is developed through this is coherent thinking, that one thoughts connect with the other. So what I do in my groups of students who want to learn how to love, I ask them in an open group session to speak with each other. And they can speak whatever they want to. The group session is called Explore Your Experience. But there are strict rules. The rule is, once you have spoken, you speak. And if another person wants to speak, that person has to repeat what you said. So if I want to speak, I have to have very closely listened to the other person and repeat what the person had said. And I don't want to have parroting, like a verbal summary, but I want the people to really hear and grasp what the person is saying. And then in the next step, when they speak, they have to connect what they say with what the person has said before. So in a way, that is a pencil exercise, but in regards to selfless listening and selfless speaking. And you always do this kind of speaking with an awareness that one speaks for the other person. If my contribution is unclear and discombobulated in a way, it's very, very hard for the other person actually to repeat what you have said. I also learn how my words are actually landing in the other person. And as a listener, as another listener who is not involved, as one of the group members, I'm often surprised what a person has understood, another person has said, and how different that is from what I have understood. very revealing exercise. My hope is maybe that we have a moment in the end to do this for 10 minutes or so. So the control of thought has to do with this capacity to be really focused and to connect one thought with the other in a logical and coherent way. The second exercise has to do with the will. And it's also called the power of initiative. And I would call it, in my clinical context, I would call it the awareness of power dynamics. So when people are together, when they are going into a patient room, there is a dynamic unfolding. There is the patient lying in the bed, and somebody who's the caretaker, caregiver, the caregiver comes in and somehow has to get this whole thing going, this interaction, with a certain intent. And the question is really when and what kind of initiative do you take there as a spiritual caregiver? When I talk about the patient, the spiritual caregiver, picture yourself. You don't need to be in the hospital. You have relationships or interactions with other people. So it's always true also for other people. Or you are maybe you are in a helping profession, maybe you're not. But this happens everywhere. So question, what is actually your initiative? When do I say something and when do I not say something? My students, they have every 2 weeks, they have to write a verbatim. A verbatim is a verbatim, word by word reconstruction of a patient visit. So it's like a written down review of a 15 or 20-minute encounter. Can you imagine how hard that is? But that's the schooling, I tell you. So as they do that, they write it down and they bring it into the group. So we would have a group of 6, 7, 8 people or and we all would look at this written encounter, which once happened in time, where every sentence, every movement is kind of spelled out. And then we would approach this with the question, was there a fork in the road? Was there anything at any point, what you said or did, which maybe one could have done differently? And that's not so much as a critique, but as an option. I want the students to learn, oh, these are actually, there is a menu, there's a choice of how I can react to something. So in a conversation, there are always 2 extremes you can go to. One is that you have too many impulses, that you act on everything and you just want to bring it out. You really want to say this. The worst thing which can happen, that you continuously interrupt other people. We have all seen that, right? In group discussions, that somebody interrupts or you even do it yourself. That's the impulse, the initiative which lives in you, but it comes out too much. Or you're too little engaged. Maybe you don't say anything. So to find the right balance and in order to create a spaciousness where the other can unfold and is still stimulated. There's a tyranny of questions. You can ask too many questions, especially in the hospital. Or do you create space, a held space, where even maybe even stillness and quiet can be very powerful. And to learn when to take this initiative is a path, because we are so used to react unconsciously. But to be really clear, this is what I'm going to do now, because I want to do it, and not just because it just happens. And that's, I think, what one can practice in this exercise, in the will exercise. And it also leads to, I think, in the broader sense, to an awareness of power dynamics. It's always connected with initiative, has to do with power. And the more we are aware of power dynamics, we can work with this. Okay, awareness of feelings. Third capacity. When these students write their verbatims, these word-by-word reconstructions of an encounter, when they're a little bit advanced and they can do this well, they listen well, I ask them, so now you're not only going to listen to what the patient says. You're going to listen to what happens to you inside. And I want you to write that into the verbatim as well. So it says, patient said, so-and-so, I felt that. When you do this and practice this after a while, when you see a patient or have a conversation with somebody else, you're not alone with the person. You have this observer suddenly sitting with you, constantly talking. Okay, what does this person say? I need to remember that because I want to write the verbatim. But how am I feeling actually right now in this moment? So observe what you observe, and especially your feelings while you're interacting with somebody else. And there again, there are two ways to go. You either feel too much, the feelings overwhelm you, you don't have any freedom there anymore, or you feel too little, you numb yourself. So after a long day, after one has maybe the 6th bad cancer diagnosis and two babies who had died, you know, how many feelings can a person actually have and be compassionate in that moment? But the moment you are aware of that you are kind of numbing yourself now, you can do something about it. If you're not aware of it, you're probably going to get sick. There is a big learning to do in how you feel with another person. When you are a chaplain or a caregiver, my students, they sometimes are young, they're just coming from college, they haven't seen much, and then when you are exposed to this suffering, you resonate with this suffering, you feel it yourself in your body, and that makes people sick. This is also what many people experience right now in the healthcare system. There is so much exhaustion and burnout, and that comes not from a resonating with the pain. And one could call that empathy. There are many ways of using this word. I label it now as empathy. But then there is another form of being with a person, which I call, I use this terminology, you can define it in different ways. I would call compassion. And a lot of research has actually been done that the empathy, the resonating with, happens in your brain, or you can see it in your brain, you know, when you then monitor it in a different space, in different area than when you actually have compassion. The empathy part, the resonating with, is in the pain area where you also experience pain, and the compassion part takes place, if you want to measure it physically, in a part of the brain where there is reward experience, a reward or pleasure is actually experienced. So I do know that often I can be exhausted after a day, but there are different ways of exhaustion. There's the exhaustion which goes to burnout. And there's sometimes just a physical exhaustion, but at the same time, a deep sense of fulfillment. And that has to do with this different approach. And the approach is actually to will oneself into love. I can love that person. I might need a moment of empathy because then I understand what the person is going through. But then I need to let go of this and come from a very, very different part in my soul, in myself, and access love or source of love. And if I cannot do this, because I have my limits as a person, what I personally do, I try to do it with Christ. So that's my resource. And other people might have different resources or call it differently, the spirit of truth or the spirit of love or whatever you want to call it. So I then aid this other power to allow me to be in this sphere of love. And people feel that. Look at the time. We have now the 3 basic things covered, which is, you know, the feeling, the thinking, and the willing, or thinking, willing, and feeling better. If you pin this for a moment again, my little display here. This is also from Brian Gray. He has this beautiful, put it like into this 2 triangles. The feeling, thinking, and willing is something where you focus on your inner qualities. But when you relate to the world, you are actually developing 3 more qualities. And the 4th one, that's actually positivity. I intended to write this down here, positivity. And the other one is open-mindedness. And both of them relate, I mean, jumps just into your eye, they relate to recognition. So if we are in a conversation with somebody, and it might be even a conflict, what's unpleasant, can we actually move ourselves into a perspective which allows us to see the positive? From the students, they have to make an assessment. They have to make a spiritual assessment of the person they're relating with. And I always ask them to look at their resources, the patient's resources, and the needs. Both needs to happen. So what are actually another person's resources? Because you cannot address the needs if you do not know what a person can do. So the need, you could say, is a weakness, but I wouldn't call it a weakness. And the resource, you might think it is a strength, but I don't like this weakness and strength thing. The weakness would be the negative and the resource would be the positive. But it's really like a key to understand a person under this perspective, to see what are that person's resources. What can they actually do? What are their capacities? Steiner says this positivity means entering lovingly into the other being or phenomena. And the guiding question is, why is the other person like this? To really move into this. I had a heroin addict I saw, was longer term patient. She was younger. Everybody knew she was about to die, and I was her caregiver. And I had a good relationship with her, but I had also a hard time understanding what it means to have addiction. Because, I drink maybe coffee or something like this. I don't smoke, and it's just kind of like physical addiction thing is hard for me to grasp. And I wanted to understand her, and she was pretty strong. So I could have asked her that question. We related well. I said to her, could you explain to me how that is? I have so many people with addiction I see. I really would love to understand it better, just to be with them in a different way. And she really took the time to explain it to me. And to do it very short, I could really understand after a while how she appreciated the taking the drug as a possibility to be in a place of total relaxation and well-being. And I did know I'm actually looking for that too every day. I mean, any action I'm doing, most of them are kind of like related to hopefully feeling good most of the time. I mean, it starts with brushing the teeth. Not that I enjoy it greatly, but and in that moment I could really join her, and I connected with her, and I could then also pray with her in a different way, because the place of feeling really well and being in tune has to do for me with the divine world, or with my relationship to God. And I could take her with me on that journey, and it was in her own words in a certain way. So this looking out for the positive in a conversation and really entering lovingly into the other being is part of the positivity exercise. Open-mindedness. One of the first things I was told when I started this work as a student, I was my student myself, was that was before I had my first overnight on calls all alone in the hospital with 900 patients, no other chaplain around, and they trained us. And it was in the first week of this whole thing. And the only thing I remember the person said, I was very nervous about, it was always, if you go into a room and see a patient, no assumptions. Remember that. If you go into a room, no assumptions. And I thought, well, that's okay. I don't have any assumptions. I'm so open-minded. I'm interested in so many things, and I'm so curious. And I love to meet people, and I'm really trying to be really open-minded, and it kind of was really, I had a good confidence in me having no assumptions. And then I started to see patients, hundreds of them, thousands of them probably. And I realized, oh my God, I was just totally surprised again. People just, did surprise me in so many ways. There was this homeless person who seemed to me like an initiate. Or there was this, this Protestant evangelical Christian who had so much faith in such a beautiful way that it really transformed me. And I carried that faith, and that I still carry that in me, just the experience of that one person. And I'm very critical of evangelical Christians, and in general, it's not my thing, but this person did it for me, enhanced my life in a very beautiful way. So open-mindedness is always an openness to discover the new, and to say, not to say no, but to say, oh. A friend of mine always says this phrase, don't say no, just say oh. And that can be trained. It also includes this thing to sit with contradiction, or something which you wouldn't normally put together. Like, I have been in a room with a dead baby from a mother was pregnant who had to lost her baby after birth. And the community around it, and how this baby was held and carried by the staff and by the mother, and the love which was in the room was real. So I had to experience an incredible pure love in the room. One of the purest moments of love I have experienced with a group of people. And this most sad picture reality of a beautiful baby dead in the mother's arms. And to be with that, and to allow that to happen, to have the love there and the horror there at the same time, is part which actually allows people to move, to evolve as human beings. And also to recognize, we go back to this recognition thing, the recognition of the severity of the situation, but also of the presence of the love that made it a healing situation. The other thing is, open mind is every work you do, which has to do with learning about bias and taking that very seriously, is another way of working with this capacity, open-mindedness. So don't hesitate to attend to bias trainings. Don't look down at them. They have their justification, and they also will always spark something. Will help you to be more open-minded. And I have a few book recommendations also at the end. The sixth exercise is inner harmony, bringing all these things together. And if you work with the exercises, you will see how they all relate to each other and reinforce each other in a way. So my invitation for this evening is, when you practice, there can be a lot of negative feelings about yourself, because it's I mean, one can really feel like a failure also when one does these exercises. And it's really not what they are intended for. That you have grievances about them. They are intended to make you love, to teach you love. So be loving with yourself and also seek moments in your real life where you can apply the capacities and practice them there as well. Any conversation is a moment for such a practice, any human encounter. And I know that these qualities, which you can develop there, foster recognition as this form of love, which we can give each other as a gift. So a check-in with Tess and with Jolie. I would say just maybe we go into the break a little bit earlier and then have this 10-minute exercise. Is that okay? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you've given us so much practical wisdom from your experience, and it opened up how to apply these principles to my own life and thinking about nurturing and recognition and how to truly find love and apply it. And so thank you so much. We're gonna take a little 3-minute break, and we can just, you can feel free to turn off your camera, and then we'll come back and do breakout groups as Julia, prompted by Julia's exercise.
And I might just give you then instructions for the breakout time to reinforce and have clarity there.
Sounds good.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call on back in just a few minutes.
Speak about whatever. You can speak about whatever you want. But before the next person speaks, the next person has to review what the other person has said without any comment or interpretation in a way, oh, I was so moved by what you said. No, just what the person said, again, without parroting, just the content, but ideally, really connecting with it, but no interpretation. And then the other person has to affirm, yeah, you heard me. It's what I said. And then you speak and add whatever you wanted to add to the other comment. And ideally, everybody does one speaking, one has an opportunity to speak and to be heard. That would be the ideal in these 10 minutes. And just observe what you observe. And maybe we can also bring this in later in the conversation, or what Julie is going to lead us through. It might, it's not.
Okay, so, oh yeah, Julie.
No, I was just going to say that, Julia, you go ahead and take your time, and that's all good. Yes.
Okay.
So should there be they're just gonna maybe reflect on something they've heard, or just start talking on any subject?
Yeah, and then also, if you can, maybe don't put me into a group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So if you didn't feel heard, you repeat, and the other person then picks it up and adds whatever needs to be added.
just one moment, making the group even.
And if there's three people in the room, is the third person witnessing?
No, the third person ideally also should have an opportunity to speak. I don't want to make it too regulated.
Okay.
Let it flow and hope for the best. You know,
Okay.
each of you speaks 1.5 minutes, you know, but I don't want that. Find your own balance there. You know, we are carefully prepared now. You're going to be so careful.
All right, I'm going to open the rooms. Thank you. Okay, I think we're all back now. I'll let you. I didn't go in, so I didn't get to experience what you all did. So I'll see if Julia, did you want to? Should we hear from some folks?
Yeah, just an invitation to share. Curious to hear.
Yeah, definitely. So if you, let's see. Oh, sorry. I think I turned my volume down. Some people are saying my volume.
It makes sense to spotlight the speaker. I mean, not just me, but you know, whoever is speaking is.
Yeah, I'm actually experiencing some technical difficulties. My screen just went black. So, Angela, could you facilitate the discussion?
Yes, ma'am. Let's see. Let me put it on gallery view. So Julia, you said the floor is open for anybody to have a share, correct?
Yeah, of the experience of the smaller breakout rooms. And I'm also not, it's really kind of open of what you are sharing intentionally.
Okay, thank you. So are you able to unmute yourself, Kathy Reardon?
Yes.
Okay, I see your hand.
Good. So I had the role of being the first one to go. So I didn't have to have that experience of repeating, although I was working on it with my colleagues kind of internally. But I did have the advantage of reflecting on what I had said and realizing how I wished I had put it maybe in a better order or something. So it was more being mindful of what I said and how I said it.
Thank you. Neelima, I see your hand.
It was a fascinating thing to recognize that I listened first, and we weren't clear of who was going to be responding or who was going to be second. So it was a great mystery if I would be responding to the first person or if the second one would be. As it turned out, the second person, the other person in our group, was the first to respond, and I was amazed to realize that what she recounted was different than what I had been keeping track of. It was heartening too, because I realized that I was caught up in remembering facts and ideas and how long since this and when did that. And what the other person heard was more of the inner process and more of the spiritual aspects of what the first person was sharing.
Thank you. Anne is waving her hand.
Can you unmute, Anne?
Yeah, I did. I unmuted. I went first, and it was just so interesting. I was feeling a little emotional talking about sort of being at a crossroads, and the talk really brought me close to my feelings. But I felt like just the reflecting back, it didn't matter what it was I said, but the reflecting back felt so comforting that I sort of stopped feeling this sort of melancholy, oh God, what am I going to do with my life kind of feeling. So it was really palpable what a gift it is to be heard, and how that just made my whole body just take a breath, and I felt relaxed. So it was a wonderful experience, being listened to. And then, of course, I had the anxiety of remembering what the person was going to be saying when it was my turn to listen. But otherwise, it was really wonderful. I really thank you for the exercise.
Thank you.
Hi, I appreciate the exercise of active listening, and then I can't be thinking about my own thoughts while I'm actively listening. But I heard that one of your classes, or what you teach your pupils, is to listen to someone and have your own thoughts at the same time, and that sounds absolutely amazingly transformatively complex. So I'll get there one day. But for me, I appreciate not thinking about my thoughts while I'm listening. Because then I can be completely present with the other person. So I think I'd have to practice that a lot before I start to also hear my own self at the same time as actively listening. Yeah, thank you.
Is it Lark? Yeah.
Well, I had the happy experience of not knowing my person first, and the happier experience of not talking first, as I'm watched to do. So I listened. And what was very exciting for me, so in the feeling aspect, when Julia was asking you to be that third person to observe, I was living into her experience with her, and then feeling that joy that she was talking about at the same time. And because we could speak the same language, I felt as though I were very much a part of her, but that I also was separate and had similar experiences. But anyway, it was a very nice experience. So thank you, Julia. It was good. Oh, and when she repeated back to me, she was picking up part of what I was bringing, didn't say, but came out of my soul sphere. So she was picking that right up too. So it was a very lovely encounter with a total stranger before tonight. So thank you.
Leah, I see your hand.
Leah?
But you're muted, Leah.
Couldn't find myself. I was amazed at how Sylvia could remember every detail of a long story that I told, and even some details that I had forgotten by then. And I could just tell by the way she was recounting it that she was holding that, at least it felt to me, that not only was she hearing it, but she was internalizing it as well at the same time, just by the quality of how she was relating it to me. So that struck me. And it felt very much like a recognition.
Thank you.
Yes, I had I had to keep beating back the masculine tendency to want to fix, to want to fix what was happening or what was wrong. And but which is not a totally bad thing, because, you know, there's that idea of wanting to help. But I had to keep telling myself, just listen. Because I'm always trying to think of solutions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, masculine energy.
That's the part, you know, where we want to have these impulses, and when actually do we take initiative and when not, you know, to become conscious about it. But you're doing that by just, you know, realizing that you had that feeling, right? I know that very well. Rose?
I had a good experience with feeling heard and recognized. And I have a question. I don't know if this is jumping in too early and we're about to transition off into this, but we all knew what we were supposed to do. And I wonder if you were, I'm curious about doing this, integrating this into our lives in a way that people don't go, what are you doing? Or, you know what I mean? Thank you.
I think there was a raising hand of Gray. I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, I just want to speak to the moment of moving from listening and reflecting to the other person, and then suddenly having to speak whatever I'm going to speak. And at that moment, and I don't know what it means, but it's in a way, I feel, and I feel like this is bad, but losing myself to listening to the other person. And at the same time, that's kind of one idea I have of when life is best, is when there isn't the self-referencing, but at the same time, I'm aware of giving oneself over and losing oneself. And it's just a subtle moment that if you would like to say something more, Julia, that would be interesting to know, like the balance between giving yourself to the other, and maybe it isn't important to be able to come back into what do I want to say at that moment, but anyway.
We're running out of time, but I may just briefly say, I sometimes allow the students, they don't have to say anything on their own. If there is quiet, they can just reflect back and leave it there. But the important thing is that the person who has spoken is not left alone with what he or she had said.
Thank you so much. I think, yeah, we are out of time, unfortunately. Henriette, did you have a quick thing? I'm excited that you're on your iPad, so I just wanted to recognize that you got on and logged on. She was having trouble getting on to the iPad, so yeah, I think we will close for tonight. And we'll have to hold some of those questions that came up at the end, just to carry into our lives. And this is what Applied Anthroposophy is really all about. So that is also, you know, the seed series that we do the seed series because it plants seeds for us to kind of consider into the future. So I hope you all take these seeds into your sleep and into your lives, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much, Julia. If you would like to unmute and say good night, do that.
Thank you, and good night.
Thank you all.
Bye, my partner.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye.
you.